Dani Dios, qué placer. How much fun to have you. I mean, I've known you for quite a long time. You were
Indeed.
we were down in Marbella, and I think you were my coach along with Gabo, and I think I progressed since then. But let's get people familiar with who is Dani Dios.
Nice to be here, Minter, and thanks so much for the invitation. I really appreciate that.
And so
Uh,
tell us, Dani, a little bit about who you are.
well, uh, uh, long story. Every time I talk about my past, I feel a little bit like a dinosaur, like a species in extinction. But yeah, I mean, I've been connected to the sport for over 26 years now. My background was I was a former tennis player. I was playing on the ATP until yeah, I wasn't good enough. Didn't make it on the top 500, and then I just ran out of money. So I had to start working, right? So I started working as a tennis coach as I was starting reconnecting with all my friends from back in the days. And all of them, they were like, Danny, you need to try paddle. Even though I knew what it was, I was very skeptical about it. I was like, no, this is not real tennis, not my thing. But you know what? With my tennis skills and across my friends, I was okay. So all of a sudden, my ego felt a little bit stimulated, and then I said, you know what? Let's just play a little bit like a professional competition. And this is when I was hit by a lorry in my face. I mean, we lost 6-0, 6-0 in 20 minutes, and I could not believe what happened. So I took it personal. I actually said, you know what? I have no idea about this sport. So all of a sudden, I started playing as I was running my tennis academy. As at that time in Spain, this was year 2000, paddle started booming. We had the former president of Spain, Jose Maria Aznar, playing. And all of a sudden, I saw that there was a bigger demand on paddle services. For me, it was kind of a nice and soft switch from tennis, which I was a little bit tired of it, to paddle. And then all of a sudden, I started connecting more into the business side of the sport. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and there I saw that there was a good opportunity to be connected to a sport on the rise. So all of a sudden, I started operating different sport facilities with both tennis and paddle. Life little by little took me to the UK, as I was strongly connected to the professional sport in the UK. So I was coaching Elena Baltacha for some years. Until 2011, I was offered a paddle entrepreneurship in London, Paddle Club London in Canary Wharf. And this is when I fully decided to switch completely from tennis to paddle. It was great years, 2012, 13, 14, but I did not quite see myself living in London and at that time. And I felt we were a little bit too early in the market. So I was kind of hesitating about what my next move was going to be. And then I decided to live in Marbella, which was the place where I currently was born and raised. So that's when I actually met you. I was hanging around thinking, what could I potentially do? So I created my consulting company, which is Paddle Trainer. And this is when we actually took the management from Real Club Marbella, and that's where we met together with Gabo.
Indeed.
At that time, there was a lot of Nordic, Scandinavian people very interested on the sport in Marbella, and this is
Yeah,
when
the knack.
correct. So little by little, all of a sudden, we were required to travel abroad to help small investors, but also institutions. So all of a sudden, Paddle Trainer, that was born to be more local, more like a local agency, started becoming just by its own nature, its own growth nature, to start giving services to basically every single federation investor. Little by little, Scandinavia took more and more of my time. So I decided to move to Sweden. Um, I was former captain for the Swedish national team, both men's and ladies, for several
So
years.
you got to hang out with Jonas Bjorkman.
Correct. So he was actually taking my role after I decided to quit. The reason for that is because there was a conflict of interest between my consulting company and the national team. So I decided to separate, to part ways. That's when I was approached by Ledap, by We Are Paddle, to
Yeah.
see if I was interested of being the sports director for the company. So at that time, it was an operator from a strong investment, a private equity called Triton. So all of a sudden, I was managing 175 sport facilities. At a very interesting time, because I remember when I was traveling from Marbella to Sweden, I was like, oh my God, these guys are just going crazy. Either I
Yeah.
know very little about my own business or I'm missing something here. And this has been a very funny phenomena. Every single country that has adopted the sport thought that they will never crash. Spain, when started building paddle infrastructure, they said, you know what, we've learned from the Argentinian market. It's not going to be the same issue, and it was. And so it happened in Portugal, and so it happened in Sweden, and so on and so on. And unfortunately, we will still see that situation happening. But it was a very interesting time. So I remember when I was being part of this investment fund, I remember I had to do like a first audit to the company, and I said, guys, have you seen the movie The Titanic? He's like, well, that's a paper boat compared to what you guys are going to witness. And I actually was like, not regretting the move that I did because I actually learned a lot on debt management and failure management, which was
Mm.
a huge masters for me. I mean, through life, I've always learned through tough times, through challenges, no question. I had way too many. I think that I'm done with that. This is the moment where where I need to where I need to move in a different direction. And I said to Jan,
Let wisdom arrive.
correct. Wisdom arrived. And the timing, I think, is also a matter of timing. Back in the days, things were very different, still are, but there is more knowledge around the sport. There is more appetite. There is more global impact. So it's a very different situation. But anyway, at that time, this is when IMG knocked on the door. They said, look, we want to get into paddle, but we know very little about the business. So we need real expertise. We want to sign up as Arturo Coelho as our first client. But a demand from him was that he was requiring professional paddle expertise within the company. So they approached me. I had a word also with Hernan, with Bebe Auguste, who was my colleague
Bebe.
with Bebe in Ledap. I talked about the opportunity, and we decided that it was a great moment to switch after 2 years of great friendships, great network in the company. But to be honest, the wrong perception when you see that paddle is growing, but at the same time you're within a company that is handling stress and handling debt. It's like, oh my God, paddle should be on a complete different direction, but this is what we need to face. So it was a logical, natural move. And now I sit in IMG WME as an executive director for all the paddle division across all markets. So very, very exciting and very interesting moments.
Well, you're based in Marbella now still?
I'm based in Madrid,
In Madrid,
actually.
right.
Yeah, yeah. From my days in Marbella with my second wife, we had a lovely daughter, and we divorced, sadly. So she moved to Madrid
I see.
with our daughter. And then when I had the opportunity to be close to her, then I
Hmm.
decided that it was the right time to come to Madrid. So I'm based in Madrid, yeah.
That makes sense. Well, I played in Ledap, of course, in Stockholm a few times. Um, what I'm thinking about is how each of these countries sort of burst onto the scene, excitement, 9,000 courts or so in Italy, maybe 4 or 5 in France. And but the issue is, I suppose, it's not there's no centralized business build. It's all lots of individuals in different cities, different towns. Oh, I want to get in on this, and then they build their club. And in countries where paddle isn't intrinsically within you have to build the culture of paddle, you have to build the community, and at that point, your utilization rates aren't there, and it feels like there's always going to have to be a big rise in the number of courts available, and then a tailoring back. But if you take the UK, where we have just peaked over 1,000 courts, which leaves us with about 2 courts per 100,000 in the big
Mhm.
cities, compared to Madrid, which is at 33 courts per 100,000 population. You kind of have to believe that the UK will get there. There's so much more room for growth. And yet we know that there's going to be a tapering back because there isn't enough good coaches. Too many courts are outdoors.
Okay.
And how is it that people don't compute that? What do you think is the recipe for creating a successful country growth?
Well, I mean, it takes time. It requires, as you said, culture. Countries need to inherit the culture around the sport. If you go to, I don't know, to Brazil, anywhere you go, people will be able to talk about football, right? Or if you go to
Football,
Argentina,
football.
correct. And if you go to Argentina, anywhere you go, if you jump on a paddle court, there's going to be a 95-year-old man telling you how to do the bandeja. Why?
Mhm.
Because there is a culture around the sport. So most of the people now, and this is, I think, current times, they step into paddle often for the wrong reasons because they see a short-term profitability. They see that there is an opportunity to do something that is on the rise. But like any other business, it requires expertise. It requires a certain elements around the sport. It requires expertise. It requires knowledge of the team who's going to be working on site. So UK in that sense, especially big cities, I think it's slightly more protected purely because of the fact that it's harder to build,
Yeah.
and the cost of construction is much higher. But for sure, we're going to see in areas where developing clubs has a lower cost, we're going to see contractions. And this is when you look into all the cycles of life on the sport, you start understanding that positively or negatively, it's a natural cycle of evolution for the sport. We had it in Spain also. We had two huge recessions. One was 2007 with Lehman Brothers. Obviously, it hit every single private club at the time where government was investing in public facilities. So imagine you were a private investor, right? You pay a high sum of money, and all of a sudden, 1 kilometer away, you have a public facility charging €4 an hour. And on top of that, you've got the lemon crisis. Well, this was, I mean, it knocked 60% of the clubs down. It was incredible, even the public facilities. And then the second one that we had was around 2011, was when the government decided to change the VAT around sport from 13 to 21%. So that 8% gap is usually almost a profit in a sport facility. So all of a sudden you take that down. So we have some strong contractions, but now luckily it's the market's been stabilized in Spain and it's still growing. I mean, there is still growth in the number of players playing. So we are living in a very healthy ecosystem. And for outside countries, I mean, that is going to be a process that will take time, will require expertise from the management team and operational team, will require expertise from the coaches, would also require some type of settlement in the appetite for users around paddle, because whenever the paddle is coming into a new market, everybody wants to play 25 times per week. But there is a moment that those users become also more picky. They want best matches. They want a better coach. They want a cheaper rate. They want a better facility. So all of a sudden, those are good and necessary filters for the sport to settle at the cost of some investments. So it's very nice times for paddle, but as I always say, it paddle requires, like any other business, a lot of expertise, and those that get into the sport only for the sake of mathematics. If I have a court at $30 an hour times 10, that's $300 times 30, that's $9,000. Oh my God, this is a gold fever, right? Then for sure you're going to have a very strong problem in no less than 4 or 5 years.
Totally agree. And when you, I mean, obviously there's no one recipe, but what are some of the key things, errors that you've seen in clubs that have grown or, come up? And what do you think are the things that they really should be focusing on when you're building a new club? I mean, obviously I'm in the UK, but I have a large number of people in the US, and I know the ecosystems in all of the different countries.
Mhm.
But in the countries where it's still sort of like a youthful, growing industry, and a club owner or someone who wants to build a club is listening, what sort of advice do you give them to make it successful potentially?
Well, first of all, you need proper professional paddle advice. Normally, when we look into the profile of investors, they are usually very successful people in other businesses, and they think that they have what it takes from a business perspective to build and make a club successful. But paddle is a very specific sport. It's fun, it's social, it's physical, it's educational, it's competitional. So if you don't know how to put all those experiences, all those ingredients on the court, and you just focus on maybe paddle must be fun. Well, great, it's fun, but losing is not that fun. If you win, you have more fun, right? So little by little, people need to understand that proper paddle expertise is required. You will be surprised about the amount of clubs out there that haven't put a proper specific business plan in place. I mean, it sounds shocking, but it's true. And the second one and biggest issue is that everybody wants to attract everyone in their club. And I always compare these to car brands, right? You have to know whether if you're going to be a Mercedes, Ferrari, Seat, or Fiat, right? And according to this, you're going to create a club and you're going to provide experiences that resonate with those users, right? So if you mix somebody who wants to buy a Fiat with somebody that wants to buy a Ferrari, often the experience is going to be very different. Somebody's going to be very disappointed. And when we go into clubs, we see that everybody tries to fight for one particular client rather than doing a nice client segmentation and say, okay, perfect. Who is my ideal client? When you go, I don't know, into golf clubs, you have green fees where you pay, I don't know, 400 euros, but you have others where you pay 60. So this little by little creates your network of users, of your fan base, right? We don't see that in paddle. There's not a clear segmentation in terms of good venues, very good venues, cheap venues. It's just based normally on the location, but not really on the look and feel, on the quality of the coaches. So I think that those two are by far the biggest issues that we see in unfortunately, fortunately for those that know how to run the business, and fortunately for those that have done that job, we see that as a very big issue. So of course, when threats come, when contractions come, you need a good team of sailors that knows how to survive on the storm. And if you don't have that team, for sure you're going to sink.
So if I were to characterize the second one you're talking about is really about brand. Like, what do you stand for? Who do you want as clients? What's your positioning and all that? And yet, in what you say, was an interesting thing I keep on hearing is that paddle is the kind of sport that you can unite a dustbin collector with a CEO, and because there's no more titles on the court, so that feels like a sort of a profiling that is really extensible and is gorgeous about paddle. But what I'm hearing is that you have to be careful not to make it so fungible that it's a sport for everybody.
It is exactly because at the very beginning, there is so much excitement, Minter, about the sport that nobody cares about all of that. Everybody's happy to jump on the court with anyone. Everybody's happy to pay money. Everybody's happy if you have a better match or a worse match. You know, you're happy to do a little bit of charity, as we say, charity on
Yeah.
those moments. But little by little, people get more demanding. If you're going to pay a high sum to rent a court, you expect a level of service that is excellent. You expect a level of matches that is excellent. You expect a level of changing rooms that is excellent, right? But when these people, after being in different places, they go to that particular place and they say, hang on a second, I'm paying here like almost $50 for a match. And guess what? Changing rooms are terrible. I can barely have a shower. I don't have a bar where I can actually have some nice food other than hot dogs. The match was actually not that good. What happens is that then those profiles start getting a little bit demotivated. So rather than coming 4 times, they come 2. And if on top of that, they discover another venue that matches a little bit more their expectations, that business itself is at risk. So it's kind of what we call it's an evolution, it's a natural evolution process. On the first 3 years, you've got like the honeymoon period. You're
Right.
obsessed with the sport, right? It's like, oh my God, I got married, my wife, my husband, the best of life. Yes. After it's like, yeah, it's good, but they snore at time, it's not so, they smell a little bit at night.
Mm.
And little by little, they get a little bit demotivated. So this is when it's more important than ever to know who is your user, what is the level of expectations that your user has, and what is it that they are looking through paddle, because the ambitions are very different. You might want to play the best match of your life, but others might want to socialize, or
Right.
others might want to have just a community to connect. So the ambitions are very different in users. And if you don't know how to spot all of that, then
Mm.
what you realize is that your business is at risk, that the foundations that where your business is set is very vulnerable. So at the moment there is a little bit of a phase when businesses crash, which is expected. I mean, and we have the perfect example in Sweden. I still go to Sweden every now and then. If you ask me now, Minter, will you invest in a club in Sweden? I will say, hell yes, of course, because the expertise was so little, the level of service was so low, the knowledge around the sport was so little that those that have a good team of coaches, that create good experiences, that have a nice venue in a fairly well-connected location, their occupation is no less than 80%. So, this is what happens when you know what you do and when you don't know what you do.
It's very much the attitude. I would call it typically an American attitude, which is, so Minter, I want to invest it, or Danny, I want to invest in you. And you say, well, I failed 2 times. Great. I'll invest right now because you know what bankruptcy is like. You know what failure comes from, and you're not wishing to do it 3 times, which is such a
Totally.
different. I mean, it feels like that's sort of the spirit within which you would invest.
Totally. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur by nature. I've been bankrupt 3 times. So, and
I've just
what,
done it twice.
yeah, and what happens is that I always compare it like a bamboo, right? You're sitting on top of the bamboo and you're kind of testing how flexible that bamboo is. And two things can happen, either breaks and you crash, or you grab power just to bounce up and evolve and create a better version of yourself. So,
All right, just to finish, Danny, then on this piece, what if someone is wanting to build a club or is building a club and would like your advice, paddletrainer.com. But is that something that Paddle Trainer provides, this type of advice to help figure out the ecosystem and modeling?
we do, unfortunately, now, because most of my time goes to WME. They are the ones that have taken that expertise from me and monetize on that, which is the way they do business, and this is how I feel most helpful to them. But yes, I mean, we also have a large number of people connected to Paddle Trainer, paddle advocates and paddle experts that they actually provide also that service. So it's whether if it's through us, whether if it's through WME, just surround yourself with experts, with the ones that have been uh, the most unconscious people from early stages that have seen those expansions and contractions, because there's very valuable teachings behind those people that unfortunately are very rare to find in the paddle space.
Mm.
So
All right. So last part of the conversation, Danny, with you, I'd like to talk more about paddle itself. This is because that's what I generally want to have to talk about.
love it.
And you still get to play paddle, as I can imagine.
I
And
do. I cannot wait to jump on the court. I mean, I'm the happiest kid in life when I go on the court.
I love it. And so let's talk about what typically happens. Someone gets into paddle. They came from tennis, typically, like you did, and you get the six love, six love.
Yeah.
What does it take to move from being a really good tennis player to being a really good paddle player?
First of all, humbleness. You need to be very humble to accept that you know nothing about a sport. So I remember when I had that crash that we were saying, six love, 20 minutes, I was destroyed. And actually, the tennis club that I was running had paddle courts, and the head coach that I had there was Christian Jensen, Claudia Jensen's father.
Right.
He was actually doing lessons there. So I went to him, like when you go to the church, to confess your sins. And I said, Christian, this happened. And he said, well, what did you expect, right? And he did a very simple exercise. He said, hit a forehand. I hit a forehand without the wall, best forehand ever. Said, hit a forehand from the wall with a cross-court ball. And I started grabbing the ball in completely different ways. I was like, you see, this is a problem. And he said, you know what? Drop the racket and catch the ball with a hand. And I was like, what? Me, that I've been a former ATP player, you're telling me that I need to catch the ball with a hand like a baby? And he said, yes, because that's where you are. And I totally understood. It took me 10 minutes to realize that I had no idea. And little by little, he kind of destroyed my confidence to recompose it like a
Mm-hmm.
surgeon. So it takes humbleness, it takes understanding that it's a team game. You think like an individual, and you don't understand that you have a player on the side, and whatever you do exposes or gives an opportunity to your partner. Um, and then just I would say those two things really. Humbleness, drop the ego expectations and understand that this is a team of two. So you start from zero. I'm not saying that the tennis skills are not good, but I will say that at the end of the day, they are a threat to the game because it's so in heritage, it's in the backbone. So whenever you are not constantly working on a habit, the tennis habit comes in again. So, and this is when we saw a change of an era in with Paquito Navarro, with this type of players, that they were playing paddle from the age of 4, and all of a
Pure
sudden,
players.
at the age of 16, they were smoking everyone. Juan Martin Diaz, these were tennis players. I mean, back in the days, that their very first sport was tennis, but of course, cannot compare it with those that pick the sport at the very early stages and it's implemented on their DNA. Complete different profile of player.
You know, when you look at Paquito, you see how unorthodox his shots are. You know, as a tennis player, you're like, well, that's not how you hit a ball, but it goes right where he wants it to go
Yeah.
with great deception. And so when you are with this humbleness, you're figuring out a team. What about things like communication?
Of
How
course, it's part of the team, right? I mean, it's like I remember I was just playing one friendly match with a paddle guy. He just got lobbed, so we lost the net. We had to go back. And it's the first time I was playing with that guy. And all of a sudden, he was going to do some type of bajada. And he caught the ball with a hand and stared at me and said, dude, the hell is wrong with you? And I was like, what? He's like, are you going to tell me what to do? But like very arrogant, very, very. So I was like, all right, I got the message.
mm,
For the first 20 minutes, I didn't know what to say. I was completely freestyling to the next level, but I swear to God that I was trying my very best to
yeah.
start understanding that I needed to speak to my partner as much as I spoke to my ex-wife 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I mean, I go on the court these days and I say, so what would you like in terms of calling conventions? And most people look at me like a deer in the headlight of a car. What do you mean calling conventions? Yeah. So how do you like to be spoken to when the ball's in the air? You're playing a bajada. And the one that's always the trickiest one, this is what I think, Danny, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, is when one is up and one is back.
Correct.
And they feel or cheating, you know, like it's those moments where you have to be able to say quickly one word, mind back, you know, or whatever, you know, Paulo, or you bring up the word, the quickest
Yeah.
word that as a convention you've
Yeah.
created together. But when you started, you're as two new people together. It's really hard to lean into that. I find that the most difficult.
Very difficult, and also for the person playing, because sometimes the other person is talking, but the person hitting the ball, it's so obsessed with the ball that doesn't have the ears to listen to what the other person is saying. I remember in very funny stories in Sweden, people in Sweden are very calm, right?
Yeah.
So
Don't like to talk too much.
don't like to talk. So everybody was like, dude, stop talking to me. You're stressing me like hell. I'm already
Yeah.
stressed enough about what to do with the ball. And then I have to listen to you. Please shut up. And I said, fine, I get the message. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like to, you know, the other type of topic I have is, well, you know, you might want to hit a few lobs here. Oh, I don't like hitting lobs.
There you go. End of the conversation.
What? You don't like talking and you don't like hitting lobs?
Yeah.
Go back to tennis.
Yeah, correct, correct. There's so many stories behind those things that it's just, and this is the fun part, right? And this is why also you need to understand what type of player are you psychologically to know who you need on the side. That is a perfect match. I always say it's more difficult to find a paddle partner than to get married in life. True, true, true with that, because some people prefer a more aggressive communication, other ones more passive. Somebody has to be the leader, other one has to be the follower. So it requires a lot for two players to connect on the court. So when magic happens, this is when people leave their honeymoon. Oh my God, I found the partner of my life. Until
Mm.
they lose the first match. And then, hey, it's not so good, this partner anymore, right? I need to find somebody better. That's the beauty of,
It's always
that's the
my
beauty.
partner's well, my partner's fault. Just quickly back to Christian Jensen. Is he left-handed as well?
No, he's right-handed. I mean,
Because both of his kids are lefties.
yes, he's right-handed. He's
Claudia and Enzo.
the mother is lefty.
Ah,
So
and
yeah,
she played too, right?
yeah. They were both very good. I remember. I mean, it was the biggest humiliation because Christian is old-fashioned paddle, meaning
Mhm.
he plays at the back of the court. He will not win 1 point, but it's impossible to win a point out of him. So I remember in some matches when we were playing, he was always wearing his jacket. He will not even take his jacket off. He was unzipping it a little bit, and he had his hat pretty loose in the head. So it felt like everything was going to fall off. And there I was, smacking the ball 350 kilometers an hour, and he will just not move one foot for the whole match. You were sweating your life out. Guess what the score was? 6-2, 6-1 down. I was like, how do you do it? How is that possible? This is when paddle was much slower at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Compounds were slower, courts were slower, balls were slower, the rackets were not so powerful, so that was more allowed. But it was like, for me, Christian, I mean, if for people that don't know who he is, go to 1984, you will see almost black and white videos, and you will see him, and it's like a complete. It's something very necessary for many beginners and for many people who start playing the sport to watch these players, because this is when you understand the true nature of the sport. The problem is that those amateurs, beginners, they go on social media and they see Juan Lebron, Ale Galan, or Tapia doing the trick of their lives, and beginners think, right, that's who I want to be. So
Mm.
they get a misperception on the true nature of the sport for those that play beginners, intermediate, advanced.
Yeah, I typically say I swear off the boys. The boys are being sort of the showmen, la magia, but look at the women, and it's a little bit more accessible. Even though the women, of course, will wipe me clean, O and O,
Mm-hmm.
without batting an eye. Let's talk about because of the transition. I've had Robbie Gattaker on. I've had so I've talked with people who have been in and Viviana Corcuera. So I've
Mm-hmm.
had people from the beginning of paddle, if you will, and the Argentinians. I always used to feel like the Argentinians had an even slower game
Yes.
than the Spaniards. But today, let's talk about the transition into today's paddle in the pro world. There's definitely a difference between men and women. There's this enormous difference between what it was and what it is. How do you see the evolution of pro paddle going forward now? What are the things to look for?
I mean, paddle is a sport that is still far from reaching its peak. Don't forget that 10 years ago, even less, I would say, paddle players were not training more than 3.5 hours in the best of cases a day. I remember back in the days when I was a former tennis player, I was training 8 hours a day, 4 hours of tennis and 4 hours of fitness every single day, plus competitions. And paddle players are starting adopting those habits. So the first big change that we're seeing is that physically they are so much better than the previous generation. And this allows you to be more flexible, more explosive. It allows you to counterattack. It allows you to take many more tactical risks because you know that physically you are in a position where you can still recover the game, recover the ball, recover the point. The second one is the speed. I mean, technology little by little is being implemented. I remember the first rackets that they were made of wood, 28 millimeters. Try to hit the ball off the court exactly with that. I mean, you will break your arm before you can actually get that. But now we
100%.
see rackets that they actually deliver an incredible power at a reasonably well balanced weight, so it's not too demanding for the players. And then also because of the physical compound, we are seeing new tactics being introduced to the sport every time. We've never seen a world where fighting for the net was almost the
Life and
normality,
death.
life and death. I mean, people are going to the war with, as many Argentinian players say, with a toothpick. But that's how it feels because these days, if you stay at the back of the court with such high quality players with incredible volleys, reality is that after 3 or 4 balls, you are screwed. Exactly. In the female side, we still see that there is more space for people to defend, but we are seeing now a very clear example with Paula and
Jose
Bea
Maria.
that they
Hmm.
are explosive, and this is creating a very big impact already at those levels. So 4 victories in a row, 4 competitions won in a row. And the reason is because they are explosive. They have at the end of the day that 5-10% more in the speed of the game, in the speed of their movement, that allows them to be much more in everybody's face. So when they are going through a high, this is what we see as a result. On the other side, it's a more stressing way of playing. So emotionally, you need to know how to handle those emotions. But when players are sync, no, no. I mean, it's so honestly clear that they are better when they are in sync. But of course, it's a more stressing way of playing. Same that we see with LeBron and Ausburger, right? Very explosive players, but mentally that's really demanding also. So when things are not going that well, the chances of crashing, big crash, are very high.
Yeah, it's one thing to miss an easy volley per se, or you hit this ball, you smash, but it goes out of the court instead of
Mm.
por tres. But when you're both transitioning up and you're pushing to get to the net, and then you miss that really hard volley,
Mm.
it's now almost becoming an unforced error, whereas it's absolutely just traumatically difficult to do those types of shots. They make it look simple. They manage to do so many, but it's now becoming an integral part of the game. And I hesitate to think about whether they are now forced errors or unforced errors in that transition period.
It's paddle on TV does not reflect the reality of the speed of the game. When you get on the court and you play with these players, I've been privileged enough lately to play with some players. We have Arturo, as you know. I was actually doing a fun game with Arturo last year at the Miami Open. We were doing an exhibition. I said, Danny, let's play a cross-court match. I mean, my God, he was still playing at 50% and the ball was coming. Like it felt like you remember the game Tetris when you were on level 20 and the blocks were coming at the speed of light. So there I was at the bottom of the Tetris trying to weigh how to manage that speed. It was ridiculous. But when you see it on TV, sometimes it feels like it's a bit slow. It's like, oh my God, that's not so difficult, right? You go on the court and you're like, by the time you've been striking the ball, there is another bullet coming at you in every single direction. So paddle has gone so vertical compared to what Argentinians are good at in horizontal, moving left to right, taking it easy, going forwards. Paddle now is super, super
Tranquilo,
dynamic.
tranquilo. It's no longer the case. I mean, that's sort of my experience in tennis. When I'm playing a good young tennis player, the heaviness of the ball, I know within 2, 3 shots, I'm going to be dead.
Yeah.
And what sort I mean, with paddle though, there's an opportunity to keep it slower. If you create a slow court, you take out maybe a couple more percentages of the balls. It do you? I mean, there's certain tournaments like in Buenos Aires where it was slower, as
Mm,
opposed to Asuncion where it was sort of bada bing, bada boom.
mm.
Do you feel like? I mean, maybe that's to its credit, but we have the opportunity. We can make clay court bottom grounds. We could do different things to allow for the old fashioned game. Do you still feel that maybe the future of paddle will rely on the ability to have that type of paddle as part of it?
It's a difficult one to answer. My if I had to give an honest answer, I would say no. I think that paddle is going to be faster and faster because there's nothing that people enjoy the most than when the ball is flying off the court and somebody goes run off the door and does the biggest trick in their lives. People go mad. It's like almost you're in the Roman circus, right?
Yeah.
I believe that little by little also speed will be introduced on the female side, perhaps with a little bit of a faster ball just to reach that level. So I think it's the bodies, the Premier Paddle, the federation is going to have to find that sweet spot between a nice show without being too slow, but without being too fast. Will new surfaces be introduced? Maybe. Who knows? I mean, I remember when I started playing paddle, I was playing on tennis quick. My
Sure.
God. I mean, you were breaking
With
your
walls, with
with
walls,
walls
cement walls. Yeah.
yeah, and the old tennis courts, the cement that had the rubber bands in between for expansion. So you were falling down and that's it. You were going straight into hospital.
Mm.
So it has changed. And in Argentina and still you see these polished cement courts that are pretty slippery or pretty grippy, depending on how old or how new it is. But I believe that we're going to see a fairly fast game in coming times, but I will not reject the idea of having a different surface. Why not? I mean, technology is being introduced into the sport. We have seen it also in tennis. The hard courts have changed a lot with the plexipave, which is a bit more of a cushiony feeling. So you don't know if maybe one of those elements is going to be introduced. Maybe there's a lot of exhibitions around the world, so perhaps a promoter introduces a different compound that creates an effect. So, but I would say that the sport is going to get only faster and faster because of two reasons: because of the show that it provides, and because of the physical capacities of the athletes that is just growing 10-15% every year.
Mm. Well, I do hope that we'll keep the slowness because I mean, I always look at tennis doubles and men's tennis doubles. I really just don't get off on it. It's, one serve, ace, second serve, aces.
Hmm.
and it's serve, return, volley, a win,
Hmm.
and there's no enjoyment through it. And if we go
Hmm.
too fast,
Hmm.
and you're just swarming the net, bang, bang, bang,
Hmm.
3 point shots. If we go from 9.4 shots per rally on average down to 2.4,
Hmm.
then I think that's the price that men's tennis doubles will have us paid, and could be end up being the problem for paddle.
It's a tricky one because, as you know, Premier Paddle, when we look into the professional competitions, paddle is still one of those few sports that has men and women playing at once in a competition. If you look at tennis, you only have the Grand Slams, right? Where
Right.
men and women are playing together. And why? Because there's 35 courts to have uh, 512 players approximately playing on the main draws.
Mm-hmm.
If you look into Premier Paddle, they have a very limited schedule where men and women need to coexist on one court. What will happen if the games were going too slow?
Right.
Perhaps there will be a segmentation, and perhaps there will only have to be men tournaments and then women's tournaments, which I personally don't like because I think that the true power of this sport is equality. You see
Mm-hmm.
14,000 people watching Delphi or 17,000 people in Argentina waiting also for the next match. You don't know if those levels of audience would be the same if you were separating men and women.
Yeah.
So they also need to find a way that they can actually host such a high number of matches for both men and women. Imagine if every match was going too slow, then it will not be possible.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
for
it's
sure.
a it's a tricky one. It's not an
Yeah.
easy one.
Yeah, when you get those sort of 2 minute points that go lob, lob,
Exactly,
lob.
exactly,
All
exactly.
right, well, Danny, been great having you on. This is the joy of paddle, and I always like to ask for a funny moment. You mentioned a few funny moments, but is there some memory that you have in your history of playing paddle that just still tickles you pink today?
Yes, yes. I actually laugh when I think of it. When we opened the first club in London, Paddle Club London, there was I remember he's a very famous guy now in the paddle ecosystem. There was this Argentinian guy get into the court. He was like, "Oh my God, you guys have paddle here in London." And I was like, "Who are you?" And he said, "My name is Mauri Andrini." And he was like, "I was number one in Argentina." I was like, "Yeah, right. Typical Argentinian number one." I actually was on the court with him and I said, "You actually play very well." He was like, "Yeah, true." And we played actually a competition after a couple of months. Super intense guy. I mean, I don't know if you know Mauri, but he's one of
Yeah,
the
I met him.
most exciting people around paddle, passionate. So we were playing a competition and there was these opponents. I think it was actually Gabo playing with Kaye, or he smashed the ball out, and he wanted so badly to get it that he missed the door by like 2.5 meters, literally 2.5 meters. So he smacked his whole head against the fence and bounced back down. Was KO. He really hurt himself, and I was staring at him. And I couldn't control myself, and I started laughing to death. I mean, I was in tears, being so
Right.
sorry for him, but I
Yeah.
just could not stop
Yeah.
laughing. I mean, he was actually running and chasing me to say,
Yeah.
"How do you have the guts to be laughing at me?"
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and I speak with him a lot and we laugh about it,
Of
but oh my
course.
God, I was laughing for like 10 minutes. Seriously, I
Yeah.
could I could not breathe. I was
Yeah.
one of
That
those
is great.
visions that you're seeing somebody missing the door by that
Yeah.
much. It was not
Yeah.
by an inch. No, it was by 2 meters. It
Yeah.
was
You
crazy.
completely forgot where he was. I mean, in the end of the day, I think circling back to your point about humbleness, humility, it's a sport that in general invites humility. And the way I pinpoint that is you never know where the ball's going to go off the fence, la reja. And so
Correct.
you have to just be there with that and suffer the consequences. Maybe you're going to be able to get it, maybe you're not. So don't be too arrogant because, by the way, we all make mistakes, including running into fences. Maori.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, been great having you on the show, Danny.
Thank you. Me
Tell
too
us,
for
how can
invitation.
people contact you or get in touch with you and your services if they'd like to know more about what you're up to?
Well, at the moment, I mean, next week I will actually be at the summit. We're going to be hanging around there. So I would really like to meet as many people as possible. So feel free to reach me out if you see me around, tap me in the back, and I'll be happy to have a nice conversation. And yes, we're working now more in the world of global brands. So if you have a big brand, yeah, I mean, this is where we're working at WME, and then through my social media on Paddle Trainer Official, I'm trying to be as active as possible. And there you will be surprised the amount of paddle questions that come around. So I always answer to everybody. So whichever the question is, reach me out on social media and you will always get the best of me. Maybe not in one day, but after a couple of days, you should expect an answer on me.
Danny, that is a model behavior. I really appreciate it. What you do for the sport. Great chatting with you. I look forward to playing with you one more time.
For sure, Minter. Thank you so much.